What a great country music track that is. Haven't heard it before, I must say. But we do play a lot of country music here, and that's what you're telling us that you want more of. And we certainly are playing a bit more of it. You too can tell us what music you want more of on our listener survey. Simply go to our website, www.warrangatimedia.org.au. We're leaving it open for another week. We want all of you to take 2 minutes and give us your feedback. It is 26 minutes to the hour of 9 on this Thursday morning Brekky show. Fernando in Scotty's seat with you for breakfast for the next week or so. And I'm joined in the studio. We have got Fritz Bolten. I've mentioned his name a few times this morning, and he's popped into our studio. Great to have you here. Fritz, welcome to our breakfast show.
Thanks, Fernando. Thanks for having me.
Great. We're also live streaming, so a little wave to the cameras. We're live streaming to everyone on Facebook, so if you want to see our melons, go to Facebook. Great to have you here. You're the chair of ORDCO. Before we talk about ORDCO, the Ord River District Co-operative Limited, tell us a bit about yourself, Fritz, because you arrived here, you were telling me, in the early 80s, straight from Germany.
Yeah, my father had travelled the world to find somewhere else to farm. I don't think he was challenged or enjoyed the farming in Germany that much anymore. He's very, very good at it, and we'd lived in Africa for a year and saw Kununurra, and he was a pioneer through and through, and came home in late 1980 after he'd done a trip up here in October, and informed my mum that we were leaving by April.
Wow.
Yeah.
Big move.
Yeah, it was.
And Kununurra, why up here?
This is so similar to Africa. I think that really appealed to him.
South Africa, Zimbabwe?
It was Zimbabwe where we lived, yep. My father was a very, very passionate farmer. He saw the soils, he saw all the things that could be grown. There was water, and it was new. It was like
certainly was back then.
For a pioneer, it was exactly what he's looking for, and it's been a real privilege, and most of the time it's been fun to see all the changes and challenges that we've seen here, and it's a fantastic place to live, especially at the moment when it's not so humid.
Yeah, beautiful time of year. Fritz, how old were you in 1981 when you arrived here? And just describe the place. It was very different to what it is today.
Yeah, so I was 11, Wyndham was substantially bigger than Kununurra when we first got here.
It was the port town, wasn't it, where everything came in and out of?
Yeah, well, and everything was in Wyndham. For example, where the supermarket was, that was still all scrub. There was Lakeside wasn't there. The airport was still a little shed, which I actually thought that was always fantastic. It was set up really well. And
it's still a bit of a shed, Fritz?
No, it's
grown a bit.
It's it's a pretty flash airport we've got here now, and that was I think that was one of the reasons my parents decided that Kununurra was an option, because it's not like they moved to an outback station, but we had it was civilised. There was fantastic people here. We had air services, and we were embraced in the community straight away.
And you've been here ever since. Tell us, you've done very well. Your family's done very well here. It's Oasis Farm, is it?
That's right. Yep.
Okay, and you have other interests here as well?
Well, my family's got, they've got a caravan park, and my mother's got a diamond shop.
Because I'm told you're a mover and shaker around town.
Well,
you're one of the big wigs.
One of the big wigs. Well, I'm not sure about that.
Well, everyone knows you. Everyone that's been here long enough certainly knows you, Fritz. So it's great to meet you and find out a bit more about you. Have you actually been on Warrangati Radio before?
No, I don't think I have, no.
Well, there you go.
Yep.
We should have you here more often. And what do you grow there at Oasis for those that aren't in the know like me?
So we grow all our farming is of course irrigated, and we're more concentrating on the grain and fibre crops now.
Which ones?
So we're growing a fair bit of corn this year. We've grown some mung beans, some black-eyed beans. We're growing chia again this year, and some cotton. And in the future, we'll be growing a majority of cotton on the farm. Have grown many different things, from horticulture to sugarcane to lots of new little niche crops. But we think now, after 60 years of searching, that we'll be focusing on cotton, and it's a really well suited crop to the north.
So tell us about this new cotton that's been genetically modified and it's resistant to Roundup, and well, tell us about it, and you're confident that it will work this time.
Yeah. So the key change in the cotton industry has been the ability of the plant to produce these natural proteins that are then toxic to the caterpillars. So it's like a peanut allergy for a person, and that means we can essentially work with nature to keep a balance of the pest in the cotton. Before that was the case, and originally cotton was grown here in the 70s, it was sprayed so much and the pest became resistant very quickly. It just wasn't an option. It wasn't possible. And about 7 to 9 years ago, there was a third gene that then came into the cotton, and when that happened, it made it possible to control the pests up here in this environment.
So you think it will be a success this time?
Look, we've been growing it now for a number of years on a small scale, and Jim Engelkey and Luke McKay from Kai started this, and we've had some fairly encouraging but most importantly consistent results with both yields and especially quality.
And David told us yesterday that it's a myth that cotton requires so much more water than everything else. Is that right?
Yeah, it's the most water efficient crop I've ever grown, and I've grown so many different crops. Its ability to take the moisture out of the soil, and also the cropping system that we're developing for it, where we're planting essentially in the middle of the wet season. It utilises some wet season rain. It'll use a fraction of the water compared to what we're using for corn or trees and the like.
Can I ask you, Fritz, where does most of the grains that you grow and this cotton that you're going to grow, where does it go from here, from the farm? Where does it go?
So the chia that we, for example, grew was going all over the world and Australia.
Where does it go first? Just take us through that chain.
So with the corn, we harvest it, put it into a truck and deliver it to the order registered co-op, where it's then put in a silo and aerated and cooled, and then from there we take it to Wyndham to then be exported to South Korea. That's what we do with half the crop, and the other half of the crop we will use for the domestic market and goes to feeding cattle for early weaning programs and the like.
So where does that go from your farm then?
So from our farm to the ORDCO on Weber Plains Road, and then it'll go to places like Newcastle Waters.
So all out of Wyndham? Does it all go out of Wyndham?
And so half of it will go out of Wyndham on a ship.
So that's
to
the
South
overseas
Korea.
stuff?
Yep. And the other half will be shipped out of trucks from Kununurra, from the co-op.
Can I ask you, what are some of the other grains that you're growing as well? So corn?
So we're growing some chia.
Chia?
So chia is...
how's that going?
We haven't grown chia for a fair while. We grew a little bit last year, but had a fairly long break.
Because it's a superfood, isn't it?
It's a really incredible food. It's a really incredible plant, and it really does make a difference to your health. Very difficult to grow, and with quite some risk. Like if we get rain at harvest, basically, we know the crop is not harvestable. A few things like that. Yep.
Talking about health, can I ask you, you've been here a long time farming. One of the things that really struck me last year, been here 2 years, though I lived in the Northern Territory for about 7 years. One of the things that struck me last year during the floods, when we were completely locked in and nothing could get in for a couple of weeks, is how vulnerable we are. We can't feed ourselves. I mean, the whole Ord River scheme was designed, initially was supposed to be the food bowl, right, of Australia and WA. But so many years later, decades later, at a time like that, we can't even feed ourselves. Most of our food comes from everywhere else. And I struggle to get my head around, why can't we... There's only 6,000 of us here in Kununurra. Why can't we feed ourselves? Why can't we sort that out at the local level?
Yeah, and I think that's a a good point there, and we used to. So when we first moved here, when there was lots of rain, we were shut off for even longer, and we used to live on fish, and we had stocks of rice and flour and a few things, and it was powdered milk, and you just did without. Now, one of the reasons we do most of our farming in the dry season or our winter, so we're actually growing summer crops in winter, which is a bit of a challenge, is we're working with nature. We're trying to work with Mother Nature and not against all the insects, for example. So if we were trying to grow food or vegetables in November or December or January, you can do it, but it's a lot more difficult. And I think all communities around the world have gotten so used to buying their food out of the supermarket. And I've just done a lot of travelling these last couple of years, and in the US we actually saw food deserts. In other words, there was whole towns that you would go to where the only food you could buy was from a restaurant or a fast food outlet.
I mean, how crazy is that, Fritz? I mean, the old days we all had, when we arrived in Australia in the mid-70s, on Southern European background, we had a veggie patch. All our Greek and Italian friends all had veggie patches. We grew so many things and had animals as well. Some animals, chickens. My dad used to fatten a pig every year so we could have it for Christmas. And but these days, everyone's so dependent on supermarkets. In isolated places like this, surely, there's a greater onus on us to, be a bit more self-sufficient in case what happened last year, it's going to keep happening, isn't it?
Yeah. But I think there's a number of things that we would really need to address. Firstly, there's that disconnect with where our food is actually coming from. And I think it'd be fantastic if people grew some veggies in their backyard.
And a place to store it, so for the different seasons, right?
Well, and my other point was we would have to absolutely change what we grow to. Where a lot of the vegetables and a lot of the food we grow is European based.
Yeah.
A lot of the vegetables can be or possibly should be a bit more capable of being grown in the tropics.
Yeah. Well, talking about that, have you in your whole time here, it's starting to grow, the whole native food industry. Have you done any work around that, trying to harness what does naturally grow here to create a market and to, make money out of that? Because it is going to grow.
So it's very interesting that Gossypium, cotton, is said to have originated from this Kimberley,
really,
Douglas Daly region.
So we did have cotton up here.
If you go bush, you will often find native cotton growing around creeks.
How different? I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah,
it's different.
So it's very different.
Yeah. So you can tell it's cotton.
Oh, definitely. You can see the bolls, you can see the fibre, but it's a fairly large shrub or bush that might be even 3 metres tall. There's not a lot of cotton on it, but essentially we're going back to our roots by growing cotton.
Okay, that's interesting. Look, I'll remind the listener who we're talking to. We're talking to Fritz Bolten from Oasis Farm, who's been here a hell of a long time. He's also the chair of the Ord River District Co-operative Limited. It is 12 minutes past 9, and I hope you're enjoying the conversation. We're learning all about Fritz and what he grows, but we did principally get him in because of the concerns by ORDCO, of which he is the chair, as I said, concerned that some tourism operators are not passing around accurate information on farming in the region. I got an email earlier this week to that effect, and I responded and said, look, we'd be interested to talk about this on the radio, because they put a fact sheet out, and I'll get you to talk to that. Fritz touched on it yesterday with David, but tell us about these concerns.
Yeah, look, we weren't really concerned. There was certainly no tourist operators out there trying to tell the wrong information to the visitors. It was more a process where we felt we wanted to openly and continuously communicate with our tourist operators. You know, they're doing a fantastic job showcasing this incredible part of the world, and people were asking questions about agriculture, and quite frankly, I think we, the farming community, haven't done our bit well enough to then communicate with the tourist operators.
I know it wasn't your email, it wasn't an email from you, so you didn't use that word, but it was in the email. And I'm quoting it here: concerned that tourism operators are not passing around accurate information on farming in the region. It wasn't your email. So what is this? And I asked David yesterday, to get to the crux of and get to the point, exactly what is this misinformation that some might be passing around?
Yeah, I think misinformation was the wrong word. But there was some understandings of, for example, how much we were paying for water, or how.
So there's how much water you're taking out, how much you're paying for it, and the quality of the water. Yeah.
Yeah, those sort of things. There's a conception or an understanding by the community, especially Eastern States visitors, that cotton is bad for the environment. And
is it because what happened in Murray-Darling River?
I think there's a couple of reasons. In the 90s, cotton was sprayed heavily, and the insecticides used were having an impact on the environment.
Because it was devastating what happened to the Murray-Darling, wasn't it?
Now, I think I'm not sure that I want to start talking about the Murray-Darling, and I.
But that's why this perception is there, isn't it?
But I think if you associate cotton growing with the Murray-Darling issues, that's false.
So it was the spraying, was it?
There's a couple of things that were going wrong with cotton. One is it was very intensely sprayed, and I believe there was some parts of the community weren't happy because cotton growers were making a lot of money. We have this tall poppy syndrome in Australia,
and they were taking a lot of water, right?
Again, cotton,
and the water wasn't getting down to Victoria and South Australia.
Yeah, but is that the fault of the cotton plant or the cotton farmers, or is that an issue with lack of rain, or is it an issue with over-allocation of the resource? Now, I believe there's an issue with over-allocation of the resource, and if you weren't growing cotton, you'd be growing something else that would possibly even use more water and have other issues.
But cotton growing in that region as well probably wasn't the most appropriate region, right? Because it needed more water than, say, up here. Yeah, David made that point yesterday.
So the Australian cotton growers have got about, their average yields are about double what the rest of the world is. So the yields and quality that the Australian cotton growers achieve on the East Coast are the highest on the planet. And it is definitely an area that is very well suited for growing cotton.
Oh, okay. All right, look, we've got about 7 minutes left. Just about these messages that some are getting out there that's required a fact sheet, a great fact sheet, by the way, that David said was more targeted at tourism operators. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. It's for tourist operators, and for us, it's a start of a journey to, I think we should invite the tourist operators at the beginning and end of the tourist season, then catch up with them and ask them how they're going. And I think they're a very important part of the community, and I really feel for them at the moment because they've had 3 or 4 really, really tough years. But we need to start a process of where we're talking and sharing and backing each other up.
Well, tell us what's in there, because this is what it looks like. Have you actually got it on you?
Yeah, I've got a copy here. And basically, it tells us what the water resources are and what the water charges are, what our soils are, what crops are being grown, and I think it's intended to tell a positive story, but it also tells some of the things that we're probably not quite so happy about. Things like the downturn in the sandalwood industry at the moment, and a few things like that.
Well, tell us about that, since you raised it.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Look,
it's disappearing, isn't it? They're all closing down.
There's some very major changes happening in that sandalwood industry at the moment, and it's really hard for the people that are especially working or have worked for Quintus, and also the people that have leased land out to the sandalwood plantations or especially to Quintus.
So it's simply not viable, right?
I think it's much more complicated than that, and it's probably
need a whole program for that.
We need a whole program or 3 for that.
Yeah.
But we are a resilient and positive community, and we need to understand what our limitations are and the risks of the changes with the sandalwood situation at the moment. I mean, personally, we're really badly affected, and it's not good for our business at all. But we as a farming community, and I think as a community as a whole, have got a really positive and resilient attitude, and we need to look at the opportunities that come from this, and not blame others for the situation that we're in. We just need to look at what's realistic and understand that it's changing. Things have always changed, sometimes for the worse, sometimes for the better. That's
Tell
life.
us about those risks. I'm not fully across, and your average person wouldn't be. So those farms are going to be taken over by presumably somebody else who's going to grow something else, right?
Yeah. So there's obviously sandalwood on those farms now, and those trees are potentially going to be ready to harvest in the next 1 to 10 years. Probably there's a huge glut at the moment for the next 5 years, and so the landowners now have got costs on that land, so that's associated with shire rates and water rates, etc. But we can't do anything with it. The traders are very standoffish at the moment, so they're not keen to buy sandalwood, and the sandalwood probably needs to be 20 years old before it's harvested to get really good quality. So we've got about half our farm under sandalwood, and I've got to start watering it. So I've got to start paying for water. I've got to start making sure that the irrigation channels and drains are maintained and up to scratch, and I've got to start spending cash. But we're not harvesting anything, and it could be 5 years, and then we don't know where the markets are. So I think for the next 6 to 18 months, it's going to be really difficult while we figure out whether we keep the trees or whether we clear the land and start farming again.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Fritz. Look, it is 2 minutes to 9. We're going to continue with this conversation because I'm really enjoying it and I'm learning a lot.
Fantastic.
And I'm sure a lot of people are as well, because as I mentioned to you off air, unless you're in the farming world here, unless you're in the know, you don't really know what's going on farms, and you guys are a bit removed, you're not in the centre of town. We see you pass through it, but we don't really know. So it is very interesting. But can I, just before we do move on, I just wanted to, as I asked David, to get a reassurance from you, the chairman of ORDCO, that there aren't any concerns with farmers taking too much water, taking it too cheaply, and that we don't need to be concerned that our waterways, are polluted and not safe.
Yep. So definitely, I don't believe that we're taking too much water. We're taking 2 to 4% of the yield of the lake. The cost of the water, there's a number of different costs associated with that, and some of that is what the government charges us for bulk water, but it's mainly the main costs are maintaining the infrastructure to deliver the water on farm, and that's been run by a cooperative, and the water users are the members, and we charge what's needed to make sure that the assets are maintained and the service is good enough. Now,
just on the infrastructure, because David made that point yesterday, just to be clear, what are those costs? Because obviously the Ord River scheme and to keep farming viable up here, there is a lot of support from, and the whole infrastructure was, the dam and the infrastructure that was initially put here was by the federal and state government, right? So there's a lot of subsidies that come our way for that, to help with that.
Well, I think they're community service obligations that the government made at the time, and the Lake Argyle and Lake Connemara assets and the dams are being utilised by many people, and I'd like to know who else is contributing to a bulk water charge in the Ord, and certainly farmers are. But again, I think those decisions that were made by some real statesmen in the 60s and 70s have built a fantastic community and so much opportunity.
But that initial infrastructure was, the taxpayer, wasn't it?
Definitely, it was a taxpayer, and we've since contributed to the tax. But if you compare our community, for example, to Fitzroy Crossing, there's many more opportunities here. And 40 years ago, Fitzroy Crossing was about the same size as what Connemara is now. And I think there's a lot of positivity that's happened here. And look, and in regards to the cleanliness of the water and the chemicals, we are the guardians of land and water. We're using the land and we're using the water, and we want to make sure that it is in a better state than when we got it. Now there's certainly runoff from our farms, so there's risks of nutrients and pesticides leaving. But the way I often describe it is the chemicals that the agrochemicals that we use have all been tested extensively, and they're all and we need to abide by label recommendations, and that's a law, and they're all soft. It's not like you spray Roundup on a plant and it kills it. It has to be sprayed at the right time of day, at the right crop stage, and it's got to be done very accurately. And a lot of these herbicides or insecticides don't kill big things. It's all the little they kill little weeds or little insects. And today the technology that we're using for insecticides, for example, is often very specific, and we're using biological. So in our chia, for example, we will just spray a natural virus that the Heliothers will die from. Not all of them will, but most of them will, or they will stop feeding. And it's quite expensive. It's more expensive than some of the other products we could use. So there's a lot of improvements happening all the time. So I feel confident that if I catch a fish in the river, I'm happy to eat it.
You are? Great. Look, it's 3 minutes past 9. We are running a bit late. We're going to bring you the news a bit later. I'm really enjoying this conversation, so I'm going to continue going with it. I hope you can stay a bit longer with us, Fritz.
Yep, sure.
Really enjoying it. Look, you mentioned, and Fritz Bolten is the chair, as I've said, of ORDCO, if you've just tuned in. And ORDCO is the Ord River District Co-operative. and the kind of the peak body, representative body for local farmers. You mentioned custodians, you farmers being custodians. We are a Mirrawong land, Mirrawong country. In terms of your farmers who are predominantly white and who came from somewhere else, what is the relationship with the traditional custodians of this land, and how much consulting do you do with them?
Yeah, I think that's certainly something that we all want to improve and are working on, and we see, I think a really good example of that is we've made sure and again MG Corp made some really big decisions in regards to co-investing into the cotton gin. So they're a real part of the Kununurra cotton industry. But again, I think there's so many opportunities and so much room for improvement, and hence why we put out this circular about information. It was just an impetus for us to start communicating a bit more.
But just in terms of that, just one more question on that. Obviously, when the whole Ord River scheme, was established and funded by the federal and state governments, local people didn't have much of a say. I mean, I've interviewed elders here in the other studio actually, who have said that their people had absolutely no say in what happened. The country Mirrawong land has been completely transformed. You would contest that it's for the better in all the opportunities, and I'm sure it is for many. But at the time, local people didn't have much of a say. I mean, the diversion dam was built on a sacred site, which some still, despair about. How, in terms of the next stage of the whole scheme, the expansion of it, I do want you to tell us a few words, because most people, as I said, that aren't involved don't know. We hear about the expansion of the Ord scheme. Well, what does that exactly mean? And how Indigenous people, we are an Aboriginal community radio station here, the only station based here in this community. How much of a say or engagement with Aboriginal people here now with the expansion, given that they had absolutely no say at the beginning?
Yeah, and I think it's wonderful how we can all learn from mistakes, and how we can all change and grow together, and certainly how our incredible Indigenous community was treated in the early days was wrong, and I think the culture of wanting to work together and communicate and respect has certainly changed. But I think it's got to go up a few levels, and we've got to see and do more communicating and more sharing. Certainly the development in Ord Stage 2 has had Indigenous involvement, and the environmental standards were very, very, very different in Ord Stage 2 than they were with the irrigation area that was built here in the 60s.
Tell us about this Stage 3. So a lot of land's been cleared. Is it down the end of Weber? Is it all that land there?
So there's a couple of stages, or what we used to call Ord Stage 1 is what was developed in the late 60s, and then the Gooming area, which was developed about 11 years ago, and now is the development of Knox Plain, and yes, there's trees that have been pushed over, and land is being developed for irrigation.
And I understand you have been working with, is it Galganium in terms of regrowth of natives where you aren't farming? Is that right?
So it's a very different approach to what it was 50 years ago, where there's where nature strips and the like are very important, and they're left and maintained and managed.
Mm. And in terms of that engagement with the expansion of the Ord, is it the Ord Valley scheme, Ord River scheme? Is it just MG? Are they the main Indigenous group that you?
That's my understanding. Yep.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, we'll leave that there. Oh, and can you just summarise the next stage? So what is going to happen? Because I've been to the end of that road and it just ends. What's going to happen with that?
Yeah.
We're in the Northern Territory when we get to the end of that road.
Yeah, so I don't believe there'll be any water delivered into the Northern Territory.
So what's the plan?
But Ron Greentree is currently developing Knox Plain, and it's really interesting when you see him out there on the farm. When he sees the soils, he turns like he's a very experienced farmer, and it's really good to say that he's a fair bit older than me. I hope he's listening.
Is it cattle? I see cattle everywhere.
No. It'll be cotton out there.
Okay, cotton, but there's a lot of cattle everywhere.
There is at the moment, but when you see Ron on that new farm and you see him in the soil and he gets so excited, he's like a kid in a lolly shop, and I think that's something really special. They're doing a great job out there, and I think it will be good for the community. We've never been able to build an agricultural industry that has enough scale to be economical, and this is the first time where we've been able to do that. The reason the sugar industry failed or closed down was because the sugar mills wasn't big enough and we couldn't get any more land.
Just tell us how it will be good for the community growing a lot more cotton that's going to go somewhere else. Sure, some people are going to make some money. It doesn't feed the local community. How does it benefit the local community?
Yeah, look, I think there's definitely going to be local employment.
There's a lot of work going. We've got 4 jobs here.
Yeah, and again, that's an issue. And I think there's a lot of work going elsewhere too.
Do you think we need more jobs here? There's certainly every organisation I know are looking for staff. It's struggling with staff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
as we bring people here to take up those jobs, there's no place for them to live.
We need more housing, and we need a strong community. We need.
But just saying it's going to create more jobs, I don't see how immediately that helps us, because we've all got so many jobs going.
But I think is it the chicken or the egg? What's first? And at the moment there's 4 jobs going here. There'll be more jobs going at ORDCO because we'll be classing cotton there. There'll be a cotton gin. There'll be truck drivers needed. There will be more work in the port in Wyndham, for example, which is good. That's a majority Indigenous employment there.
So the idea is that the area will grow, more people will come, and it will grow.
And then there's going to have to be a change in housing. There's so much hurt and pain. You need these ups and downs, and I think especially from a housing perspective, we're on a down at the moment, and it's not going to get any better by having less people. I believe it's going to get better by having more people.
Well, let's go out on a positive. So you think the next stage will be good and the future is bright for our region?
Yes. Yep. I think
in one word, yes.
I think there's lots of challenges that we probably haven't foreseen. I think there's also lots of positives that we probably haven't thought about yet either. But for the farming community, it's a really, really exciting time. Also pretty scary because we've committed virtually everything we have to building this cotton gin and getting the equipment to grow the cotton. But remember, we're also growing other crops still. It won't just be cotton. It's an incredible journey that's in front of us to make this a prosperous and a prosperous community.
Well, thank you very much for coming and telling us all about it, Fritz Bolten. We really appreciate all your time this morning. We've gone well over time. Really appreciate you and your time and our conversation. Thank you.
I thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to doing it again.
Thank you. Great. Well, I'm sure Scotty would love to have you in down the track. We'll follow the developments. And thank you very much. That's Fritz Bolten, the chairperson of ORDCO, the Ord River District Co-operative Limited, speaking to us here on our local station. It is coming up to 9:15. We're going to take you to the news on your local station, Warranggati Media Aboriginal Corporation. Thanks for joining us this morning. And if you're Facebooking live, bye-bye. Thanks for joining us. And stick with us. We've got lots more to come until 10 a.m. Natalia is at the door. She's ready to come in and help me with this last hour of the program.
Maybe you lost your